Good day. Thank you for joining RKL eSolutions and HRIS for the Adaptive Insights Automated Budgeting Solution webinar for Stage 100, 500, and X3. Mark Severance will be our presenter today, so let's jump right in.
CFOs and other financial leaders in growing companies. And it really spans industries and other types of companies where people are spending far too much time on the financial operations. They're spending too much time on the day-to-day data and in getting just the transactions to understand where they are, what they are, and just to be able to produce basic financial reports, and ultimately don't have enough time to be able to focus on the true financial performance to be very strategic and to be forward-looking for the organization. So really the goal, the goal, which is fairly obvious to everyone, as well as this study that KPMG is, to say, how can we flip that pyramid so that CFOs and other financial leaders are freed up to spend a great deal of their time on the financial performance and minimize the time that's required on things like financial operations, transaction, and data management. But the biggest challenge to that is folks lacking the specific tools to do that. And again, we're going to talk about several challenges that come with a spreadsheet-based planning and reporting model. So we're going to talk about that now, and some of this may sound familiar to you. First, spreadsheets and email are no way to collaborate. Really, the planning process ought to be collaborative. It ought to include folks from across the organization and not just the finance team. The problem is that when your process is based on spreadsheets and email, it's very, very difficult to collaborate because there's no process tracker to know who has done what and where are we in the process, how far along are we, what is left in terms of completing the process. In addition, there's next to no audit trail, and there's a real problem with what version of the truth are we working with. And so often a lot of time is wasted to try to have a process that is collaborative and efficient when the best tools that you've got are sending and receiving spreadsheets via email. And then once collected, there's a manual data and roll-up process. So that's problem number one. Second problem is we're going to return to the 1980s and a cartoon culture reference. Some of you may remember He-Man, and He-Man's catchphrase was, "I have the power," and that was pretty cool when he was fighting the bad guys. The problem is that for a finance team in a growing organization, it's not necessarily great to have concentrated power with one or a select number of individuals. They ought not be the sole source for data, information, and analysis. And as much as it might feed their ego, hopefully it doesn't, but maybe it does, ultimately that's not most helpful for them in terms of them being the strategic resource, as well as it doesn't allow executives and other key stakeholders to do self-service, to get their own reporting, to drill down, to really understand what's going on, and to make decisions that are timely and data-driven without having to rely upon finance. Third, often we see a spreadsheet model that there is not a lot of buy-in from the extended team. They perhaps have been asked to participate in the process for a number of years, and ultimately it's a hassle. They don't see the value. They don't see it being a productive process throughout the year, and there's really little to no accountability for the numbers that they provide and their performance against those numbers. And so often they provide token effort or no effort at all just to get it off of their plate. The reality is, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, it's going to be a much more collaborative, much more effective process if people see value in the process, are buying in, and feel the accountability throughout the year so that they participate with a renewed sense of importance and purpose. That's the third problem. Fourth problem is often there's limited or non-existent connection with core systems. So for those who are planning and reporting in Excel, the integration is either very limited or non-existent, and so certain data has to be manipulated every time or entered multiple times to be able to update a planning or reporting model. And this is across ERP, CRM, HR payroll systems, and even random spreadsheets. And ultimately, that means that probably much of the data doesn't get included in the model just because it's too much work to be able to try to update things every single time. Silos are great when it comes to a farm, not so great when it comes to what should be a comprehensive business planning model. And the fifth challenge with a spreadsheet-based planning and reporting model is that ultimately you're limiting insight and flexibility with a yearly planning process. Some folks, that's all they can handle because it takes so much time and it's so inefficient and so manual. They say to be able to do this more than once or to be able to iterate or to reforecast at certain times throughout the year, it'll never happen. We just can't ask our people to take that much time and effort away from their day jobs to make that happen. And ultimately, the reality is that you're lacking the insight and flexibility to make changes that inevitably come either inside or outside the organization. So in terms of a summary for what is the problem, or what are the 5 biggest problems with a spreadsheet-based planning and reporting model, it really should be obvious. Here's the summary: that to be able to try to do so, especially for growing organizations who are trying to be much more strategic in terms of their planning, forecasting, reporting, it's just silly to try to continue to do it with an Excel-based model. Now, that's the bad news. And you've got options. What should you do if you find yourself in this place and saying, wow, yeah, that sounds a lot like me, and perhaps there's even more challenges beyond that? What do we do to be able to make progress and to drive our organization forward? Well, one option is keeping calm and banging your head against the wall, but we wouldn't recommend that. Really, what we would recommend as an option is to take steps to move from static planning, which we just described, to active planning. So what are the characteristics of an organization that's embraced active planning? First is they are driving company-wide collaboration. Company-wide collaboration. So as we get into this, we want to turn to our famous and favorite business philosopher, Dilbert, about perhaps a typical budgeting cycle. I don't know if this looks familiar to any of you on the line. Hopefully not, but it does provide insight into a process that's perhaps not as collaborative as it ought to be. But organizations that are really trying to drive additional strategy into the planning process are saying, how can we be collaborative? How can we get folks outside of finance involved in the process so that, one, they are providing timely input, but then beyond that, have the ability to interact with the data to be able to understand how they are performing against their plan, and there's built-in accountability so that they are truly bought into the process. So it's important to be collaborative, and that the planning process doesn't only consist of the folks in finance. Not only do we want to be collaborative, but you need to think in an integrated fashion. So across the lines of business or across the departments, right now many of them may be in separate silos, and the effort to be able to combine that data is very, very difficult or very, very manual. It's important to think about an integrated solution that when somebody makes an update to customer management or billing or marketing, etc., that the data flows across the model without manual intervention, and really all the way to the financial statements. That really is the goal if you're thinking about being collaborative and working in an integrated fashion. Number 2, enable a self-service on-demand culture. Going back to our He-Man illustration, a lot of finance teams are the sole source of information for the rest of the organization, and ultimately that does a disservice to them as well as the rest of the organization. So a question that you can just think about here as you're watching: how is data or specific information or analysis accessed by your employees? Does it require folks to be able to go to finance and ask them to create a report or print a report, modify a report, or to say, can you give me the details behind the report that you have provided in some way? Or are there self-service capabilities where executives or managers in the various lines of business or departments have the ability to get the reports that they need in the format that they want that enable timely and data-driven decisions. That's really the goal that puts users in the driver's seat and gives them flexibility, allows them to be self-sufficient, proactive, and presents the data in an intuitive manner. And that could take the shape of a number of things. One, it can be ad hoc reports that allow them to ask their own questions and get their own answers. It could be management-style reports that are simple to modify and provide data in a familiar format. Or it could be something that could be a board report, something that's very highly formatted and combines raw financial data with also narrative to be able to tell the story that a lot of board directors and management folks need. We'll talk a little bit more about each of the three types of reports that are available in Adaptive in just a few minutes when I provide a brief presentation. So that's number two, delivering a self-service culture so that people are empowered across the organization to get the data they need when they need it. Number three, best practice for those that are looking to move away from static planning in Excel to something that is much more active and dynamic. Three is the ability to create rolling forecasts and driver-based plans. We talked about the challenges of having a single process that happens once a year. Reality is growing organizations, folks that are best in class, are planning and forecasting more often than once a year. And so one question to ask yourself is, how frequently are you forecasting, and how frequently would you like to forecast? Research shows us that 64% of annual targets are obsolete in 4 to 6 months. And so if you're planning only yearly, most likely that process is a large waste of time, or at the very least, it's obsolete prior to when you are going to reforecast and begin your plan again. So think about how can you have a plan that's never out of date, and the ability to be able to frequently import actuals and plan with drivers to reforecast quickly. Really important, and the ability to make those changes, to be able to bring in actuals and say, oh, things have changed either internally or externally, and then be flexible and adaptive to make those changes in a timely fashion as opposed to just waiting and then ultimately missing an opportunity to be better as an organization. So that's number three, rolling forecast, being able to quickly combine actuals with the budget and with the forecast to be able to understand where you're going and what changes need to be made. Number four is the importance of automating KPIs, or key performance indicators, as well as dashboards and scorecards. What does this look like? Well, often and unfortunately, what companies are left with without specific tools to be able to solve for this problem is they have a form of a solution, but unfortunately, many times the solutions are not connected. And so they exist in sort of these data silos, and so maybe there's some type of a dashboarding solution or analysis solution, but often it can be completely separate from the planning data or the planning model. All of this ends up in extra work, extra manual effort that ultimately creates some of the very problems that folks are trying to solve for. So when you think about all three of those components, they need to be present in one integrated solution so that you can report on results, that you can align every part of the organization on the best course of action, and understand and model the decision. Key performance indicators, metrics, analytics, very important. And again, focusing on the metrics, using those analytics to identify metrics that drive growth, incorporating external and internal indicators, and fine-tuning the KPIs that really drive the financial models. And again, all of this is only possible if you've got a system that's designed to deliver it. Very few companies are going to be successful to integrate all these components if you are solely reliant upon Excel. And the last best practice I want to talk about is the importance of being able to close and disclose quickly and accurately. Now, this is a bit of a duh statement, but did just want to point it out that the ability for top performers to be able to do so saves a significant amount of money and provides that much more visibility in a timely fashion to the key stakeholders, knowing how they're performing against expectations, and then maximizing the time available to make required adjustments. And one more graph for you here about shortening the financial close and the importance thereof, being able to drive additional value into the organization as you are able to streamline the financial close process. So in summary, as we think about the best practices, or how to move from a static planning in Excel that's not very collaborative, that's not very comprehensive, and certainly isn't continuous, and then with the goal of looking towards a more active planning process, it's really a continuous cycle to provide a 360-degree view of the business, to be able to budget and plan and then monitor performance, as well as doing the reporting and analytics that are so critical. Now, you might not be surprised based on the introduction to the webcast, but Adaptive Insights is a tool that provides all those components and that allows companies to work towards and to incorporate those best practices. And the suite of products that all work together around planning, as well as reporting, data visualization, forecasting, and all types of reporting is a single suite of modules that work together to provide all of the benefits that you see here. Significantly simplifying the planning process, accelerating it, cutting costs, and delivering real value by enabling folks to be able to plan and forecast, report, and analyze, etc., much faster and much more effectively. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and move into the demonstration. Danica, are there any questions? Whoops. Are there any questions that I should pause and answer here before we move into the demonstration?
Not that I see in the Q&A chat box, but I will quickly unmute all the lines. Should anyone have a question, please speak up. The lines have been unmuted. Okay, looks like we're ready to roll into the demo.
All right, sounds good. So I've got up here a login screen for Adaptive Insights. Adaptive is a cloud product. That means it's accessed via a browser. That means that Adaptive takes care of the application. They update it 3 times a year. It doesn't require any input or effort on your part. It happens automatically and can be accessed via any browser, any web-enabled device. So when I click on Submit, we go ahead here to the process overview. And 3 things I just want to point out about Adaptive. Adaptive is designed to be owned and operated by the finance department. There's no programming required, which we found significantly reduces the dependence upon the IT department or an external consulting firm. We often think about it as it requires clicks, not code. Second, as you see here in front of you, it's designed to be collaborative. Here's a process screen that shows very clearly what tasks have been completed, what tasks are in progress, what tasks are running late, which provides the owner of the budget process to be able to follow up and make sure that those that need encouragement and those that are late are followed up on accordingly, and so things don't get behind and the process moves smoothly. So it's designed to be collaborative. The third thing is that Adaptive has strong built-in security. Users are limited in what they see and do by security permissions, so you can be confident that the right data is only viewed by those who are supposed to see it. With that as an overview, I wanted to go ahead and click in on the menu, and Adaptive is built on a pretty simple and easy to use intuitive menu structure. Adaptive has actually won a number of awards for ease of use. In fact, Gartner, BPM Partners, Nucleus, etc. have consistently ranked Adaptive #1 in usability. We think that's important because the solution is only as good as the people who have bought in and see it as a tool that's going to benefit them. So a real benefit in addition to the power of the application is how easy to use that it is. I'm going to go ahead and click on Discovery. And Discovery is the data visualization or dashboard component of the adaptive suite of applications. And right away, you can see it's really designed to be able to present information to people in a way that allows them to be able to analyze quickly a large amount of data and to understand what's really going on in the business. We like to say it transforms data into meaningful information. And so you'll see a lot of visual cues in addition to some of the numbers. You'll see things here in the middle of the screen that allow people to quickly say, what are we doing well on? What needs attention? Where are we trending? What looks really scary, and perhaps gross margin, and so this requires some attention. You can see that there's all sorts of charts and graphs and types of scorecards here. This one here has an exclamation point on it to be able to say, hey, this one really requires attention. In addition to these types of dashboards, and you can have an unlimited number of tabs here based on your role in the business and what you want to see, you have the opportunity to drill down on these specific numbers. So for instance, if I say, well, that's interesting, the revenue is $1,071,000, but what is behind this revenue number? I have the opportunity to click here, and then you'll see it presents a number of options to say explore the data or expand it by different dimension. You'll see the dimensions here, and we're going to go ahead and click on customer. And then
Mark?
from there, yes.
We have a question.
All right.
Does this only incorporate Sage data, or will you have the ability to create APIs from multiple data sources to report from?
That's a great question, and the answer is B. It will incorporate ERP data from Sage as well as data from any other application or even just Excel spreadsheets. And so you're not limited in the number of applications that you connect to.
Great.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. So you see here that you have the opportunity to drill down by dimension, so you can not only just see the high-level information, but also a specific graph here that says, all right, here's how the revenue actuals that we brought in from ERP breaks down by customer. One of the other features I want to point out here with Adaptive is the versions that Adaptive provides. Right here you'll see that we see working budget. This is the working budget version that we are in. Now perhaps though we wanted to see a different version, and so we wanted to be able to see a dashboard with a different version. And you have all of those available to you provided you have the rights or the permission to be able to see and interact with that data. The thing I wanted to point out about this is that Adaptive makes it very easy to create new versions. Literally, within a few minutes, you can have a new version. Often people clone the existing version and then call it something different. This provides for very effective what-if planning. What-if planning that says, we've got something that could be happening. Maybe we're thinking about an acquisition, or maybe something's going on in the economy that we need to plan for. Quickly clone a version, make a copy of that, and then change it up to be able to do the analysis that you need to. All right, we're going to go ahead now and then look into Sheets. Adaptive, kind of the core of the Adaptive planning solution is the various sheets, and we'll drop into the expense sheet right now. You'll see right away that it looks an awful lot like an Excel spreadsheet with the columns and rows and some of the formatting. We think that's a good thing because people are often familiar with Excel. But Adaptive goes beyond the familiar look and feel and provides advantages that Excel really can't. And that is namely that you're not going to break the model. Links aren't going to be broken, as well as when you make updates in the system, you save and all of the sheets are connected. And so automatically changes get saved and then it updates the rest of the model where the sheets are connected. Additionally, some of the features that we really like is that you have the chance to drill down on specific specific data. So here you see a little red arrow or a little red triangle in the box. What does that indicate? That indicates, there's a note behind this cell. It's a cell note. This $5,000 represents one-time building upgrades. That's interesting. Some of the other things you see here, some of this data is based on assumptions. And so if we assume that we're going to hire somebody new in February, all of a sudden we see that based on that new hire, we're going to have 3 months with new hire training. And telephone expense is going to go up because the new employee is going to require a telephone and will add to that overall bill. So you can see how you can incorporate key assumptions about adding an employee and the associated costs with the rest of the model. I mentioned that earlier that you can drill down on specific cells. So rather than just seeing that 500 number and saying, well, I wonder what that is, and being able to have notes, now you can actually click on Explore Cell, which brings up the Cell Explorer window. And this is a tremendous advantage for anybody who has been working with their team and said, where did this number come from and who's responsible for it? And everyone kind of looks at each other and says, I have no idea. That's not my number. Well, Adaptive provides specific insight into each number, showing where it belongs to, the different levels in the organization. And here's your note again, as well as a complete audit trail. For folks who have struggled with things like an audit trail and what version of the truth are we working with, this is very, very powerful to be able to provide additional insight and accountability to those across the organization. All right, we'll go ahead and close on that. We'll go back to our menu, and we'll move into reports. Just want to take a quick look at a couple of different types of reports. We've looked at the discovery module, the data visualization and dashboard tool that comes with Adaptive. Now we want to look at the HTML reporting tools that are available within Adaptive as well. And so we'll go ahead and click on this top report, a very common month expense and various analysis with year-to-date numbers. And we'll see it comes up, and you'll notice a couple of things. One, it's pretty easy to understand. You've got your March 2016 data here on the left-hand side, as well as your year-to-date through March 2016. You'll see here that we've got different notes. So the same notes that we saw in an individual cell, you can have here in line, down at the bottom of the report, or one of the newer features, actually you can put them off to the side of the report as well. You'll also see additional visual clues to say we've got a problem in our maintenance and what's going on there. And so even if you didn't have the notes in line here, you would see the red flag and the big red number variance that indicates a real problem and gives you the opportunity to be able to do some further exploration there. Now you'll see on the left that you have a number of hyperlinks that you can choose. And so if we say, well, you know what, that's interesting. Here's 85,419 for the total company. What if I drill down on that and give me a closer look into what's really going on there? So if I click on office expense and then say, let me drill into the organization. Now I'm looking at this office expense at an organizational, and you'll see all the different levels here within the organization. You can, again, get various insight that you didn't see at the top number, and now you can see, wow, we've got a real problem in Sales North, and then allow you to be able to take corrective action and be proactive with correcting some of those problems as you drill down and get additional information on the data. So that's the HTML reporting tool, very powerful. If you want to be able to change the time or even the version, you have a lot of flexibility to do that very quickly, very easily, right on screen there, and it will do that without having to create an additional report. So that's reporting option number 2 within Adaptive. And then reporting option number 3 is a tool called Office Connect. And for those that are used to creating highly formatted reports in Excel and then having to transfer those to Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, Office Connect rather, is a powerful tool to be able to integrate adaptive data with these Office tools, right? So a lot of times it's a very onerous and manual and labor-intensive process to update these every single time in a manual fashion. But what adaptive gives you the capability is to connect the data with adaptive. So rather than having to recreate it every single time, you create your formatting, you connect the adaptive data, all of your headers, all of your conditional formatting, trend lines, etc., all stay the same, and then you have the ability to update it as you need. So I'm just going to go up here. You see here it's October 2015 to March 2016. I'm going to update it, and we're going to push this report 1 month forward. I'm going to click refresh, and then we'll see here now the data moved from November 2015 to April 2016. All of the trend information, the conditional formatting, all of these components and visual cues changed based on the data. And then from there, you can automatically make those connections to Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. And just like that, your users are free to start adding additional value to the organization. So that's what I've got for the presentation, the brief presentation of Adaptive. I know that it is that was very brief and very high level, and so just want to say, to the extent that you're interested in knowing more, whoops, what do we do here? Went to the wrong screen here. Oh, there's my family. Hi, everybody. Adaptive, hang on a sec here. Sorry about this. We've got PowerPoint issues. All right. So while just got a few closing comments about Adaptive, but I did want to pause and see if there were any questions as it relates to the related to the demonstration itself. Any specific questions before we wrap up with a few slides?
I have just unmuted, wait, let's try this again. Unmuted the line, so if anyone has any questions. Okay, wait, looks like there might be one coming in the chat box. How does it integrate with Sage ERP?
Yeah, great question. And how it integrates with Sage ERP, you have a couple of options there. At a high level, one, you can create an export from Sage ERP and then an import. Most often people just start with the trial balance and export that and then import that, and it works pretty quickly, pretty easily. For others who are saying, you know, we need to do it in a more dynamic fashion, it's not just a once-a-month type exercise for us, but we want to be able to create perhaps more frequent integration or importing of actuals, bringing in of actuals from ERP, and or additional data elements, which you can absolutely do. And from there, there's an integration platform that works that we would configure with you to be able to say, all right, what data do we want to bring in, what type of manipulation needs to be required to bring it in, and how often do you want to bring it in. So there's an automated integration platform that for those that want more extensive data or more frequent updates, you can absolutely do that. A lot of times people start with the export-import just as they're getting going, and then as they really realize the value of the integration, we'll then move to a more automated integration option.
Great. Okay, looks like there's one more question. When is the optimal time of year to implement adaptive insights?
That's a good question too, and I'm going to maybe give you an unsatisfactory answer, but that really depends. Some folks certainly like to say, wow, we would love to be able to do our budget process, and you know, sometimes that's an annual process, and so let's get out of Excel mode as well as then be able to really leverage the power and the flexibility of adaptive. That would be one option in time for the annual budgeting process. Others say, you know what, this is going to take some time, and we realize this is a change, not just for the finance team, but also for the organization. And so let's start maybe with a little bit of a smaller goal, and maybe we'll want to do our reforecast. And so we'll do the reforecast and adaptive. That might help to maybe work out some of the kinks and get people on board. And so it's a bit of a softer launch. Other folks are saying, you know what, the planning is great, and we want to do the planning, but really there's a tremendous amount of value if we do reporting and take advantage of the reporting tools that Adaptive provides, and we want to start with reporting. Well, in that case, really any time of year is great to be able to leverage the very powerful and intuitive reporting capabilities of Adaptive. That's not necessarily tied to a budgeting cycle, and so people can start with that at any point and then add the planning components when it makes most sense.
Okay,
Good question.
I don't see any other questions, so you can go on.
Very good. Thanks, Danica. So just to be able to talk about what does the cost look like for Adaptive. And so you've got different components. We showed you the planning. That is really the sheets that we showed, as well as the ability to do the plans and forecasts and the web-based reporting. And so that would be one of the bundles that Adaptive provides. A second bundling option would be planning and analytics. And that would be the planning, the web-based reporting, and also include the discovery dashboards, the data visualizations that we started with, as well as the Office Connect tool that allows you to connect to Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. And then you've got full users, I think I mispronounced that, full users rather. They're perhaps administrative users or those that are actually entering data into the system, creating reports, interacting with it in a meaningful way. And then you've got what's called view users. And those folks probably aren't entering budget data, they're not an administrator, they're probably not creating reports. Really, they want to be able to view dashboards, they want to be able to view reports, perhaps change parameters and drill down into data, but perhaps a lighter use in the system, perhaps not quite as frequent, and so really the system cost is dependent upon the number and the type of user. So what I tell people is that Adaptive as a cloud-based tool, it's a subscription, it's an annual subscription. It really starts about $15,000 a year for smaller organizations that have a handful of users and require some of the basics that Adaptive provides. And then for larger organizations that need a larger number of users, it just goes up from there. And so to the extent that there's additional questions or more specific answers needed or information needed, very happy to have that conversation and be transparent about what folks can anticipate. One other component I wanted to mention to you before I turn it over to Danica is that a process of implementation, we call it the 4D methodology, and really the definition phase comes first, which is a thorough review of what you have as well as the ongoing goals and what success looks like. And then once things are defined, it's really a matter of designing it, really creating that blueprint for project success. From there, it becomes the development phase, where creating the different sheets. If you want to start off with planning, and that would include expenses, personnel, cost of sales, capital, etc., as well as financial statements. And then, of course, the integration templates, along with the required reports and dashboards and Office Connect links. So that's really where we're building it out. And then the deploy phase, and probably very similar to something that you've experienced with Sage ERP or perhaps other implementations, is where there's a final review, there's training to make sure that the users are equipped, as well as the user acceptance testing to make sure that data is flowing through the system, that reports are tying out and are accurate, and that we're not going to face any unpleasant surprises once we decide to go live. So we often recommend folks to say, create an adaptive plan in phases and plan for phase one. You don't want to do 100% of what you need in phase one. Often that becomes problematic and perhaps is a little bit too much at once. And so we like to say start with realistic goals and meet those goals, and then build and grow from there. There's so much opportunity for value that Adaptive provides, so have a good plan to be able to start small and grow it from there. So with that, Danica, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Would just say to everyone on the line, thank you so much for your kind attention. Would love to be able to talk with you further. And Danica, I'll let you kind of detail what are the next steps for those that might be interested in more information or assistance.
Actually, we have one more question.
Oh, great.
Will it connect to SQL tables for integration?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will send a link with the replay should anyone want to share this with their teammates. Also, you can contact Gia Lane on the East Coast and Mike Scher on the West Coast. Those are your customer reps. Should you need help with pricing and compatibility, things like that. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll give you about 15 minutes of your time back. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye.